Today we are going to talk about factoring perfect squares. They're actually called perfect square trinomials, and they look like this. They should be in the form of a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, and when you factor them, you should have them in the form of two identical binomial factors that look like a plus b times a plus b. So there's our a and our b there. And since they are identical, we can write them as a plus b squared. And here's an example of one and what conditions it has to meet in order to be able to write it that way. The first term has to be a perfect square. Well, perfect square of 4x is 2x, so the first term is a perfect square. And the last term has to be a perfect square. Well, 25 is a perfect square of 5. The third criteria that must be met is the middle term has to be 2 times the product of the square roots of the first and last terms. Well, there was the square roots of the first and last terms right there. 2 times 5 is 10, times 2 gives us 20. So this is a perfect square trinomial, and so I can factor it using this method. So let's go ahead and give it a try. Remember, it was a plus b times a plus b. So let's look at this one. This is 4x squared. Well, the square root of 4x squared is 2x, so that's going to be my first term in both of the factors. And the square root of 25 is 5, so that's going to be my second term in both of the factors. And since the whole trinomial is all positive, there's no negatives in there, I'm just going to put pluses in there. Now, if you look at this, I have two identical binomial factors, 2x plus 5 and 2x plus 5. So, to simplify it even further, we can write it this way. Since they are identical, it is 2x plus 5 squared. And that is how we factor a perfect square trinomial. Now let's try it with this one. First we need to determine if it is a perfect square so that we can factor it using this method. Well, 16, perfect square of 16 is 4, or the square root I mean, and the square root of y squared is going to be y. And remember, there's a coefficient here, so it's really 1, right? 1y. And 1 times 4 is 4, and then I multiply it by 2 to see if I get this middle factor, and I do. 2 times 4 is 8. So this is a perfect square trinomial, and I can factor it using this method. So my first term, I'm going to drop out the 1. I never did write it, but I'm going to drop out the 1 because we don't need it. And so this is going to be y, and my last term is going to be 4 because that's the square root of 16. And again, it's all positive, so it's going to be y plus 4 times y plus 4, which I will rewrite as y plus 4 squared. And that is how we factor this trinomial. Now in the next example, you can check again. Well, this 9 is a perfect square. It's the square root of 3. 3 is the square root of 9. And 25 is a perfect square. It's a perfect square of 5. So I can do this one also using the same method because 5 times 3 is 15 times 2, and that gets me 30. Now if you notice in this one there's a negative here. And if there's a negative in front of the b term, that means that my two binomials are going to be negative. Other than that, you factor the same way. So this is still going to be 5x, and this is still going to be 5x, and the square root of 9 is 3. So it's going to be 5x minus 3 times 5x minus 3. And if we went back and FOILed this, we would see that the inner terms and the outer terms would both multiply to negative 15, which you would add together to get negative 30. So that's why it works. And to simplify it even further, I write 5x minus 3 squared. And that is the factored form of this trinomial. Now let's check this one. Well, the square root of 49 is 7. It's actually 7y because the y is there. And the square root of 36 is 6. Now remember, for it to be a perfect square trinomial, I have to be able to do 2 times 7 times 6. Well, 7 times 6 is 42, but then times 2, it comes out to be 84. So this is not the right term for this. It would have to be 84y in there for me to be able to factor it using this method. So we would have to factor this using a different method, which we're not talking about today. So this one is not a perfect square trinomial. So we will save that for another day. And the last thing we're going to talk about today is solving equations with perfect squares. This one, just to double check, this is the square root of 4 is 2, The square root of 81 is 9. 2 times 9 is 18. And 2 times 18 is 36. So this is a perfect square trinomial. And I'm going to factor it using the same method we've been using. Square root of 4x squared is 2x. Everything's positive, so our sign in the binomial is going to be positive. And the square root of 81 is 9. So I get 2x plus 9 times 2x plus 9. And remember, it is equal to 0 because now we're solving using equations. And it's equal to 0, so I can use the multiplication product of 0, which says that one of these two things must be 0. Well, they're identical. So in this case, I only have to solve for 1. Because it's going to be the same, x is going to be the same for both of them. So 2x plus 9 equals 0. I'm going to subtract 9 here. I'm going to subtract 9 here. That's going to give me 2x equals negative 9. Divide by 2 on both sides, which will give me x equals negative 9 over 2. So my final answer, and the only thing in the answer set for this one, is going to be 9 over 2. And that is how we solve equations using perfect squares.